Welcome to 21st Sports Recap and Reaction for the New York Jets at the Indianapolis Colts in their Week 2 matchup, September 21st, 2015, as these two teams met on Monday Night Football. And we're going to go over every possession. We're also going to go over some stats and give our breakdown and analysis. But let's start off with the first possession, and the Jets got the ball first. But after 5 plays and 38 yards, they would end up punting the ball to Indianapolis. So now the Colts would take over on their own 11-yard line. Then after a penalty ended up pushing them back to the 7, they would end up getting a first down. They got out to the 29, then another penalty pushed them back to the 19. And then on 2nd and 18 from the 21, Calvin Pryor intercepted Andrew Luck, and that was the first interception for Luck in this game, the first of many, as the New York defense was getting the pressure on Andrew Luck, and the Colts were making the mistakes as they were feeling that tremendous pass rush. And up front in the trenches, the Jets were definitely winning the battle up front. So now the Jets would take over, and they had the ball right there on the Indianapolis 9-yard line, starting their drive in the red zone. After a few plays, Eric Decker would catch a 6-yard touchdown pass from Ryan Fitzpatrick. With the extra point from Nick Folk, it was 7-0 Jets over the Colts. So now the Colts would take over after the kickoff on their own 24. They would march down the field going 65 yards in 7 plays, and they would end up with a 4th and 2 on the New York 11. And so Vinatieri would come out to attempt a 29-yard field goal, and he hit the right upright, and so it was no good. So the score remains 7-0 with the Jets in the lead over the Colts. So now the Jets would end up going 3 and out and punting the ball to Indianapolis on their next possession. The Colts would go 3 and out as well and punt it right back to the Jets. So now the Jets would end up punting the ball after 6 plays, and then the Colts went 3 and out. Now at this point in the second quarter, the Jets had the ball 1st and 10 on their own 38. They would end up driving 27 yards in 6 plays and end up with a first down on the Indianapolis 35. But then Mike Adams intercepted Ryan Fitzpatrick. So now the Colts would get the ball back, but they went 3 and out, and they weren't able to capitalize on the turnover and turn it into points on the scoreboard. So as I said, 3 and out, and they would end up punting. As they gained 9 yards, they came close, but instead of going for it on 4th and 1, they brought out the punting unit. So now the Jets would get the ball, and they would drive 54 yards in 10 plays. And just after the 2-minute warning, Nick Folk would kick a 35-yard field goal to extend the Jets' lead to 10. So it's now New York 10, Indianapolis 0. Now the Colts would get another chance before halftime, but with less than 2 minutes left, they would end up picking up a first down on first down, getting out to the 34, starting from the 22. As Andre Johnson caught a 12-yard reception. But then on 3rd and 10 from the 34, Andrew Luck would end up fumbling the ball, and Darrelle Revis recovered. So Luck fumbled, and they missed an opportunity there, but they set up the Jets with an opportunity. So now they had the ball at the Indianapolis 44, and they would end up getting into field goal range. And on 4th and 8 from the 30, Nick Folk came out to attempt a 48-yard kick, but he missed it wide right. So it still was 10-0. So the two teams would go into the locker room for intermission, and then coming out for the second half, the Colts would get the ball first. They would start off on their own 20-yard line, and they would march down the field, going all the way down to the Jets' 1. So on the 1-yard line, they were faced with a 2nd and goal, and they gained no yards. And so now 3rd and goal, they gave it back to Frank Gore, and Frank Gore fumbled the ball. Darrelle Revis recovered. And so now the Jets would get the ball as they thwarted the Colts' attempts to get into the end zone and on the scoreboard, as the Colts were yet to score in this game. So now the Jets took over on their own 10, but they would end up going 3 and out and punting the ball back to Indianapolis. So now the Colts would take over at midfield in their territory on their own 49. They would cross over and get 2 yards to the Jets' 49, but then Darrelle Revis intercepted Andrew Luck, and so now the Jets had the ball back. So the Jets had it on their own 31, and they would end up bringing the third quarter to a close. And then, faced with a 4th and 7 at the Indianapolis 38, they elected to punt the ball. And so now the Colts would take over, and they would end up on their own 9-yard line, but they went 91 yards in 8 plays, and Andrew Luck would hit Dante Moncrief for a 26-yard touchdown pass as the Colts got on the scoreboard, and with the extra point from Vinatieri, it was Jets 10, Colts 7. So the Colts trailed by 3 despite all the turnovers at this point, and now the Jets would get the ball on their own 20, and they marched down the field 80 yards in 7 plays, and Ryan Fitzpatrick hit Brandon Marshall for a 15-yard touchdown pass. With the extra point by Nick Folk, it was back to a 10-point lead with the score New York 17, Indianapolis 7. So now the Colts would get the ball back, needing to score as time was running low, as there was about 6 minutes left in this game. And they had the ball on their own 8-yard line. They did manage to get a first down, a couple of first downs, and they got the ball out to the 44. But on 1st and 10 from the 44, Andrew Luck was intercepted for the 3rd time, this time by Marcus Gilchrist. And now the Jets would take back over as they now had the ball on their own 38, and they would go 34 yards in 8 plays, and Nick Folk kicked a 46-yard field goal with less than a minute left to extend the Jets' lead to 13, as it was now 20-7 New York over Indianapolis. So now the Colts would get the ball back one last time, but the game would come to a close after a 9-yard reception to Josh Robinson from Andrew Luck as time expired for the Colts. They had a lot of turnovers in this game. They had a lot of trouble getting anything going on offense as New York's defense was dominant, especially up front. They were getting a lot of pressure on Andrew Luck throughout the game as they were winning the battle of the trenches. Luck was 21 for 37 with 250 passing yards, 1 touchdown, and 3 interceptions. So the pressure up front was forcing Luck to make mistakes, and they were getting some great play out of their backfield, or out of their secondary for the Jets, and they picked off Luck 3 times. Ryan Fitzpatrick was 22 for 34, 244 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. And on the ground, it was actually a tie for the leading rusher in this game between Frank Gore and Chris Ivory, who each had 57 yards. Frank Gore did it with 15 carries. Ivory did it with 14 carries. Ivory also had 2 receptions for 3 yards, and Frank Gore 1 reception for 4 yards. As neither back really had a big performance, but Bilal Powell was actually getting some carries, 12 carries for 38 yards for New York. Luck had 24 yards on the ground off of 4 carries. Robinson 5 carries for 12 yards for the Colts. Fitzpatrick also had 1 carry for 6 yards on a scramble. But Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker both coming up huge with big performances out of that receiver position. Brandon Marshall 101 yards off of 7 receptions, including a touchdown. Eric Decker 8 receptions, 97 yards, and a touchdown as well. And Dante Moncrief 7 receptions for 122 yards and a touchdown for the Colts. The one bright spot for the Colts in this game. Of course, that came kind of late. They were still in it at that point, but they just kept making mistakes. And the Jets defense was forcing those turnovers, getting that pressure. Actually look at the defense. And Screen had 7 tackles for the Jets. Harris forced a fumble. He also had 6 tackles. Calvin Pryor with an interception. Darrelle Revis with an interception. He also recovered a couple fumbles. Gilchrist with an interception. So they were just getting right up in Andrew Luck's face, forcing him out of the pocket, hitting his hands, making him make errant throws. Like I said, the secondary was making good plays on the ball as well. And over on the Colts side, DeQuell Jackson was their leading tackler with 6 tackles. He had a forced fumble. Mike Adams had an interception, and Anderson had a sack. Then we look at team stats. The Jets had 20 first downs. The Colts had 17. And on 3rd down, the Jets were 4 for 12 for a 33% conversion percentage on 3rd down. and the Colts 6 for 14, converting 42% of their third down opportunities. Then we look at total net yards. It's actually pretty close as could be. It's the Jets had 344 net yards, and the Colts had 343, just a 1 yard difference there in net offense. Then we look at the rushing yards. The Jets had 101 yards on the ground, and the Colts 93. Then we look at the passing game, and the Jets had 243 net, as Fitzpatrick was sacked once for a 1 yard loss, and for the Colts, 250 net passing yards. Andrew Luck was not sacked at all. So despite the heavy pressure up front from the Jets defensive line and their linebackers, and even bringing in guys from the secondary on blitzes like safety blitzes, nickel blitzes, they're bringing some pressure. The thing was, Andrew Luck was getting rid of the ball, but that was where the mistakes happened, where the interceptions happened. If he had maybe taken a couple sacks, maybe a couple picks aren't there, but that's you got to make. It's like choosing between the fire or the frying pan, whatever. It's like out of the fire into the frying pan. Do you want to get sacked? Do you want an interception? Really, the sack is a little bit. It's like the lesser of two evils. It's to take the sack, but he chose to risk it, and with high risk comes high reward, and also can come big failure. Ended up being a high reward for the defense with those turnovers. Red zone efficiency was also a real big difference in this game, as the Jets were 2 for 3 in the red zone, converting 66% of their opportunities, and the Colts were 0 for 2. So if they had converted those two, that could have been another 12, 14, maybe even 16 points, depending. And then they're right there in this game. But the Jets came up huge in the red zone, as they have excellent goal line defense. They were able to strip the ball from Frank Gore there on the 1 yard line, and that would have been at least 3 points, even if he doesn't get in the end zone. If he did, that's 6 plus the extra point. So the Jets, phenomenal defense. The defense really is what won this game, is they were just getting after the ball, getting after the quarterback, and there were some ball hawks, and they were, taking advantage of the opportunities. Said lots of turnovers, ended up being 5 turnovers for the Colts, as they just could not keep their hands on the ball. And when you turn it over that much, then the chances of you winning are very slim to none. And also time of possession in favor of the Jets as well, as they were doing a good job of managing the clock. They had the ball 31 minutes and 48 seconds versus 28 minutes and 12 seconds for the Colts. So it wasn't necessarily a lot of production per se out of the running game, but they were committed to the run, and they had a balanced attack. And from that commitment to the run, that kept the clock going, that kept their defense off the field. And that's one of the best ways to, go after a team with a high-powered passing attack, especially with a quarterback like Luck. The best way to beat them, keep them off the field, and keep your defense fresh, get pressure after them. Bowles is doing an excellent job there in New York. He's really got that defense playing phenomenal. And the Jets are now 2-0. And we know that when a team starts 2-0, 63% of the time, that team makes the playoffs. So that's not a guarantee, but it's more likely than not. And so with that, the Jets definitely have started off the season on the right foot. They're on the right track. They're playing a lot better than I expected them to be playing, especially this early. The one concern, Fitzpatrick and his turnovers. He did throw that interception, but other than that, he didn't do too bad. He didn't do too good, but he didn't do too bad. He did all right. And so if they can protect the ball, and with the defense that they have, and they keep committed to that ground game, the Jets should, have a good chance at making the playoffs. Like I said, 63% of the time, if you start 2-0, then, you have a very good chance at winning. 63 is not a bad chance. If the Colts, on the other hand, teams that start 0-2 only have a 12% chance of winning, of going to the playoffs. The Colts have done it before. They started 0-2 last year, and they made it all the way to the AFC Championship game. So it's not as if they haven't done it before. Will they be able to do it 2 years in a row? We shall see. They can't afford to go 0-3, that's for sure. They're going to have a tough game coming up this week, but they got some problems. And actually, the thing is with the Jets, their strengths are up in the trenches on both sides, on the offensive and defensive line, and that's the weakness of the Colts, especially their offensive line is not consistent. They're not getting quality play. They're letting up too much, of a pressure on Andrew Luck. They're not opening up the holes really in the running game, and that's something that I don't know how they're going to fix that, but that's what they're going to have to address. So we'll see if that line can come together. But if they don't, it could be more of the same. Although, if anybody can bring this Colts back, it's Andrew Luck. They say he did it last year, so we'll see what they do next week. But the Jets, I said, they starting off strong with a couple of big wins, especially this one here on Monday night. So they win in prime time in front of a nationwide audience. The pressure was up, and they responded well. They've got some really, good talent on that team on both sides of the ball. So, and they're playing at a high caliber. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. Definitely interested to read your thoughts and opinions. Thank you very much for listening. It is appreciated. I hope you're having a good day and had a great weekend and have a great week. And enjoy all the sports.